All right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this is March 20th, right? March 20th, Government Relations and Communications Committee. That snow day threw me off. I'm still we're trying to recover which day is which. So let's start with our introductions and administrative remarks.
Yeah, I just have a quick update regarding the live broadcast of committee meetings on the television from this room. So as you all know, Byron McCook and I, along with Nikki Crone in the television studio and a couple other technology staff members have been looking into this. And it looks like, according to Applied Video, who did an assessment of the equipment we currently have, they believe about a $1,000 investment should enable the capability of televising our committee meetings. But we still don't know what the human labor cost might be required to facilitate the process. So it does look like we have some information on the software upgrade we would need, potentially the hardware upgrade. But again, we don't know in terms of the constructing of it, and if it needs to be assembled, there will be a cost there. Just wanted to provide an update on that.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. That question came up at our last meeting, so we have an answer to that. So thank you. And let's go for public comment. Is there any public comment this afternoon? Good afternoon, Mrs. Spurtle.
Thank you. I'm not Mrs. Spurtle. Cindy Spurtle, 106 Valley Forge Terrace, Wayne. Just a couple, was that the televising of these meetings that you were speaking about? We still can't, Comcast hasn't agreed to, Comcast or Fios, to do it for free. We aren't a big enough customer that maybe we can.
I don't think it's Comcast so much as our equipment that we would need to upgrade to do it without even Comcast's involvement.
Getting an okay, it's just the equipment needs.
Yes.
But to piggyback quickly on that one, we are looking into, with the township, if they're upgrading. Remember they're doing that?
Yes, they were doing an audit of our studio and the township studio.
Okay.
And I've repeatedly asked for the status update on that audit from the auditor, and I've yet to get it, so I will continue to ask where they are with that.
Possibility we could work together on that rather than
If anything's possible, we could try to get something.
$1,000. Just like to say that it looks like we're making progress on the communications. In last month's meeting, you said that the survey should be out by the 1st of March, but on your new calendar, it looks like it should be out by now, the 15th. It was due to go out. And so I'll wait to hear how that's going. And then also just, and it's probably something that you will cover, and it may be just the setup of the communications draft policy. It looks like the first two paragraphs are part of the purpose, at least the way that I read it, but it doesn't, it seems to be indicating, and it may just be the placement of authority, that it may be in the wrong position. It should move down to the third paragraph, and I had a question on that. And also the delegation of responsibility should move up to start at the paragraph below that, and just reading through the policy, but it should be. And also, I had a question on the top of page 2 of the policy, just on the superintendent's responsibilities, and I was wondering, the superintendent will delegate the responsibility of chief communications representative for the board to the director of communications, and I'm wondering, is that something the board should delegate, or is that something the superintendent delegates since it's a board responsibility? And thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, we will approve the minutes from last week. Does anybody have any questions, concerns about the minutes? Last month. See, I told you. One snow day, and I'm completely disoriented.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if we'd had 2 snow days?
How about you?
Okay, so let's say that the minutes are approved from February 14th, 2017. And we have two agenda items today. The first is going to be an update from Michael Petiti on our the creation of our communications policy.
Would we be able to flip?
Yeah.
Do you want to do that?
Would
okay.
you be all right if we flip?
I'm fine, either way. I'm good. I wasn't expecting to start until. close to
Okay,
5:30
okay.
anyway, so.
You look like you were ready to go, that's all, but, okay, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay, so, and we're going to try to budget at this point, let's say if we can get through the update within 20 minutes, Michael, and then we will move right into Adrienne, and we have until 5 o'clock, so we'd like to leave some time for some public comment at the end, and we'll be good. So, without further ado, tell us about this great communications policy that's evolving.
Okay, thank you. Well, before we get into the policy itself and discussion about how that has formed to this point, I wanted to just give some background on our timeline and some updates have been made to it. Now, again, for those that are trying to see it on the screen, it's going to be a little bit difficult for you, but I've tried to color code some of the areas where you can look at it on your PowerPoint that have been updated since the last time you may have seen this. This includes today's meeting being changed to the 20th from the 14th. I don't know if that's on the one you're seeing, but I updated it on the one that's on the PowerPoint here. So really, this was just done to push the surveys back to the 15th from the original date of opening. I believe it was the beginning of March. And that was to allow for some more review from the board, from RESPA, from RTEA. I want to thank our teacher representative, Ms. McNally, for helping out with reviewing the survey along with Mr. Wood. And that opened on schedule last week, and it was first promoted in the Reader, our newsletter, this Sunday, and it'll stay open until April 9th. And I have a communications plan around getting the word out about that I'll talk about a little bit later. And then you'll see also in the green kind of down towards the data deliverables that we've pushed it back a month to get the draft policy to policy committee for their beginning of review. But we still are on schedule if things kind of pan out as we hope to get this in place before the school year next year. Okay. So also, I wanted to kind of give some sort of a background as to why this policy is important. And I thought that it'd be nice because we may not have discussed the exact rationale behind creating something like this. So I thought it'd be nice to see just the amount of groups currently that we have, that we support as in the communications office. And these are just kind of a smattering of groups. By all means, not exhaustive, but it gives you an idea of the people that kind of come to the communications office for support and who we're trying to service through this policy and this administrative regulation. So from the parents and students all the way to, Philadelphia area citizens, we reach, all sorts of different stakeholders, and that's kind of what we're trying to accomplish, crystallizing in this policy. Also wanted to talk about the available sources of communication that the district can offer. This falls in line with what we're trying to do with the administrative regulations. What we really wanted to capture in the ARs, which haven't been written yet in a draft form, but which will come down the pike soon, is just how much we can offer certain groups depending upon who those groups are. And we wanted to make sure that we understood what is out there to be offered. So this list is pretty comprehensive in the things that we could do for people that request communications from the district. So what's the policy trying to accomplish? The policy itself is going for philosophy, so that's my clever graphic for philosophy. And the AR and part of the policy is going for means, or the media that we're using to communicate. And this concerns crisis communication, it concerns general communication, promotion, information sharing of curricular initiatives, etc. And those icons demonstrate the different kinds of ways we can communicate, similar to the slide you saw before. So we wanted to try to get these, both the philosophy of communication in the district and how we communicate, into one policy in AR. So that's going to allow us to say the people that want information from us, so the people asking the communications office to share things, where will it go? And right now, there's nothing really saying where will this information go. There's no real if this, then that. And a part of the hope is to make something like that happen. So we know when someone asks to get some information out, we can say, you get a photograph, you're going to get a newsletter, you're going to get a sign on the lawn at the middle school. Same thing with School Messenger. That's our alert system. We want to figure out through the survey that we're doing and through the policy what is warranted for our alert system. Should it just be saved for emergencies and snow closures, school closures? Should we use it for expanded purposes like event sharing, deadlines for assessments, achievements that students might make and the schools might have? And so we asked that question in our survey. Would you like to see us use School Messenger and expand the capacity beyond just getting calls when an emergency or a crisis or a closure needs to be communicated? So the surveys, the purpose of those surveys was to, again, help guide the AR development. It was to, for staff particularly, to learn about internal communication and how that's working out here. The development of the surveys came from a review of national and local surveys, communication surveys, as well as a review of previous district surveys that we've performed. And in those surveys is where kind of the internal communication component kind of came out, and the need for us to really take a look at how that's going here at the district. So we definitely put into the staff survey specific questions involving internal communication. The timeline is still on track, and the promotion, as you see there, will be done. The PTOs have already been given information to share out through their newsletter, which comes out in the beginning of April. And I actually spoke with the PTO district-wide coordinator today, and she's ready to pass the word out, word of mouth, and through their other communications channels. And as you see at the end, public survey is what we all discussed. It's not part of the staff and parent survey that's currently out now, but it is something that we want to do. And when we do develop the public survey, we'll make sure that we have input from the public in the development of that, just as we did when we developed the staff and parent surveys. So how did this policy come about? I looked at local communications-related policies from TE, Lower Marion, Unionville, Great Valley, not specifically communications, but maybe they involve promotions, maybe they involve information sharing, media relations, and also national policies and guidelines, as well as, again, looking at the past school board association policies that are out there that we have on the books already. And I'll tell you how that kind of came into play in the current policy draft. So we'll start with the draft purpose and authority of the policy. Now, you don't see this on your sheet here, but I can tell you that looking at the first two paragraphs, those come directly from our current PR objectives policy. The part of the third paragraph comes from a policy that TE has on the books called School District Communications with the Public. And then throughout the policy that you'll see here, this is only the authority and purpose sections, it pulls in from our PR objectives policy, our news media relations policy, and TE's policy, which I thought was very valuable and very well done. And it kind of combines all those into one overarching policy. So this will let us subsume the news media relations policy and the PR objectives policy, should we want to go in that direction, replace those entirely, and we'll just have this policy on the books instead of those two separate policies. And then we'll just need to work on the AR. The AR can include things such as this. And this is where we're really going to get into the meat of how we want to deliver our communication. And this is where we'll have a much longer document, not too much longer, but a little bit longer than 2 pages, that will go over these items, I foresee, at least in the AR. And that's all I have for my presentation, but I'm happy, obviously, to answer questions and go over the policy in more detail.
Lydia?
No, I'm completely on board with what you're doing, and it seems more than adequate. So carry on.
Okay.
Yep.
If we were to go to the alert system to use it more than just we're using it now, is there a cost each time we use that?
No.
Okay, well, that's good then.
Yeah.
Amy?
Yeah. That's it. I'm on, Michael. Now, I just want to say thank you so much. Already, I just think recently, I know the membership has noticed just the increased communication, both from you, Mr. Petiti, and Mr. Batchelor. We're so appreciative of it. This survey looks great. we can't wait for the members to take a look at it. I think you're going to get a lot of really valuable information, and I think RTA is very happy to support that and to make sure that we really roll it out and encourage everybody to take it. We're excited.
Thanks.
Patty? Mr. Batchelor?
You have anything else?
I do, actually, if that's okay. I wanted to know if the submission to the solicitor for Wednesday is still on the schedule. And if that's the case, I didn't know if that would have been backed up because our meeting was postponed, but you still want to submit to him on Wednesday?
Yes, I wanted to obviously give everyone the chance to take a look at the draft as it is in case, I missed something and we want to move things around before I send it his way, but that is the plan, still on
Okay,
track.
so would this be the forum, with all the hard work that you've done, if I were to offer some ideas about maybe moving a thing or two around?
I think so, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
What we're
All
here
right,
for.
so I'm wearing both the policy and the communications hat at the same time, and so that can be a dangerous combination for
Okay.
those of you who know me. But anyway, I had a couple questions. Paragraph number 5, did you mention, Michael, where that came from, which says that all staff members are responsible? Was that from one of our previous policies?
Yes, that is kind of a combination of our PR objectives policy, NTE, school district communications with the public policy.
Okay. So one of the things that I was thinking is that there were a couple elements of this that I thought could fold would be maybe a better fit in the administrative regulations than in the actual policy. And I anticipate you might get that feedback when this does go to the policy committee. So that paragraph, that 5th paragraph, was one of those paragraphs, as was the number 4 guidelines paragraph. It starts to tread, I think, into the territory of specific enough information that to me, the way it looked, it would fit better within the administrative regulations. So after the paragraph on page 2 that says the superintendent delegates the responsibility of interfacing with the news media and then lists 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I looked at a bunch of other policies in our policy manual and came up with language that kind of reflects the way other policies end their policies and depart onto the ARs. And so it could read something like this: the superintendent or the board directs the director of communications to establish or prepare and implement communications procedures and guidelines as outlined in the accompanying administrative regulations. So that would take care of moving everything over to the AR. I didn't know if you were comfortable with language like that, but I did feel like those 2 paragraphs might be a better fit. They're detailed enough that they would probably be a better fit in the AR. So and in terms of making that segue, that's the kind of language that I saw in other policies that would create that handoff.
Okay, sure. As I mentioned, a lot of that language is pulled from our current policies. So I know that those were from '08, and I think they were PSBA boilerplate policy. So totally understand the thinking about moving some of that language out. But they currently stand in a policy. So that's kind of why I figured that we would move them into the new version of the policy, since we currently have had them as a policy for 9 years.
Right. I don't think those policies had ARs, though. So had they had ARs, maybe they would have fallen in ARs. And this is just my opinion. The policy committee could have and the rest of the committee here could have a completely different take. But I think the more concise, I've seen when the ARs are really comprehensive, we're about to do one on Wednesday, where the policy is half a page and the ARs are 6 or 7 pages. So I almost thought that if this sticks mainly to philosophy and delegation of authority, anything guideline related would then be a part of the AR, because there are so many guidelines that you're looking to establish in the ARs.
And I think Michael's agreeing with you. The other piece is the ARs can be changed by the administration, and it doesn't have to go back into the policy for it. So it gives you more ability to move things around, which I think would be a good idea.
Right.
The other piece, though, that I would question would be the language about the board delegating anyone except for the superintendent. I'd have to get I'd have to get a read on that, because
Most of our policies say the superintendent, the board
Yeah.
approves the
We
policy
should
and the
not be-
superintendent
yeah.
delegates.
right, that's what I mean.
Just talked about that,
So
yes.
that piece I would not be in agreement with.
Right.
No, you're saying you agree with how it's written.
I think Chuck was talking about the segue that I
The
offered.
segue that you offered, if we could just remove the part about the board could
Board,
delegate it to
yeah,
someone else.
We don't
So,
delegate.
We-
so in other
we
words,
would
the
give it to the
superintendent,
superintendent, right.
the superintendent
Delegate.
delegates, or
Yeah,
delegates to the director of communications
Correct.
exactly.
the
That is-
responsibility to prepare and implement communication procedures and guidelines as outlined in accompanying administrative regulations, boom, and then you can put in
That's
those,
correct.
right,
Yeah.
okay.
I think.
That's more consistent with.
Well, so just on a global level, and for your, I guess, knowledge, we've tried to keep our policies as brief as possible and then shove all the detailed nitty-gritty into the AR. So just along a, kind of overview concept, what Amy's saying makes sense. If, and I didn't realize this, we didn't have ARs for communication before, then that makes sense to pull out more verbiage and stick it into the AR would be consistent with what we are trying to do.
I would agree.
So
Okay.
I'll put it back to you, though. I mean, I'm fine either way, but
Yeah, I think I just got a little indication. I think this went out to all the board members in their Friday packet, and I heard some rumblings from policy, so may as well get in front of that anyway, right, before it goes to the solicitor. I also had a question about paragraph number 4, where it says, "The board believes it is the responsibility of all district departments, staff members, and schools to incorporate plans for sharing information and communicating with district stakeholders." To me, I was a little concerned that giving so many different groups the responsibility to incorporate plans for sharing information and communicating was potentially going to be more confusing than consolidating. And I know we had talked in some of our leadership meetings about having stuff go through you. So I wanted to see how you felt about the idea of inserting something like, "The board believes it is," or the superintendent, or believes it is the responsibility and in the best interest of all departments, staff members, and schools to consult with the communications department to develop communication plans, to keep all district stakeholders apprised throughout the development process of all major district programs, initiatives, and activities. So it's really the same wording, but the big change is that they would consult with your department before creating their own plans, because
what
that's
we're
the beauty
trying
of
to
having
do.
the luxury of a communications department, right? And we've
And
been,
that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to use your abilities in the best way that we can, rather than people coming to you afterwards when there's an issue. We want you to be the one that leads that through, so it's seamless.
Yeah, you're right, Ms. Coleman. The impetus for that was the desire that came through the committee of it being a philosophy where programs that get rolled out from the inception to the completion, we consider how to share out information about them and how to communicate about them so we aren't kind of surprising people towards the end with what's happening. So I think any way we can accomplish saying that, just the point really was since the departments can kind of know as part of their planning process, while they may start thinking how many students is it going to affect, how many staff members we have to get professional development for, during the beginning of their planning, they also think, how are we going to communicate this? And I've already started developing a kind of communications management plan template so that you can give it to a department. Now, they might not be implementing those communications, but at least they can say, okay, who what, where, when, why, during the development of this program, and complete that template so they know what they need to communicate and when, and I can obviously assist them with creating that communication.
well, yeah, and so that was the idea of the inserting the word "in consultation with," because if I remember what you said initially when you were introducing this, that paragraph number 4 came from a PSBA boilerplate policy that we had, and maybe at that time, we didn't have, it didn't refer to a director of communications or a communications department because not every district has one. So would you be open to the idea of inserting the responsibility of all of those groups to consult with you, even if it means picking up your template not necessarily, I didn't mean to say that you would do the work, but if they consult with you, then you're in the loop and you're aware, when those are major initiatives, something with the stamp of the communications department, I think, should be on it for the sake of consistency and protocol. Does that make sense?
It does, and in fact, do you mind if I jump in? And I think that, and maybe that's another piece that we maybe look to put into the AR as well, because that might be more of an AR piece as well. Because I do agree wholeheartedly with that philosophy, so I'm happy to hear that's been here, that concept of, we look at the policy, and the policy looks to be concise, and then really in that AR is where we get into the guidelines and into some of the details. That is a good way of managing policy. So I think we could do that with that paragraph too. We could look there and see, does it fit adjusted in here, or is it something that becomes part of the AR?
Right.
Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. Be on track to have one more comment?
Sure.
One more.
One more? Okay. We can. Okay, set the clocks. Okay, number 3, delegation of responsibility. The communications department shall identify, provide, and maintain. I got nervous when I heard the word maintain, because given how many different web pages do we have?
11,000.
Right. That's what I thought. So I thought, what about the word oversee as opposed to maintain?
I like
Because-
oversee. Let's do that.
Okay. All appropriate channels
Done.
for the dissemination and receipt of communication. It's also a very long sentence, and I'm a champion of shorter sentences, so I put a period at the end of communication there on the second line, and started the next one with, these channels include, but are not limited to, the district's website. I wanted to know, and other digital media. I know that's not social media, because you mentioned that next, but what is other digital media, just out of curiosity?
That would be our newsletter. Anything that comes through, online. That's not our website, and then that's not our Twitter account or our Facebook page.
Okay,
So we have a newsletter again, or a email blast, or something like that.
okay. Okay, and I went on to just wordsmith a teeny bit, the district's official social media accounts and the district's emergency notification system, thereby ensuring that staff, families, and citizens of the district are accurately informed on the planning, policies, programs, issues, and accomplishments of the district, its schools, and its students. So I changed staff members, took that members out, and put families and citizens.
That works.
Okay, so sorry for all the words. Like I said, it's hard to not be in your policy chair,
Oh, no,
your
no, no.
communications chair at the same time, but
Save us working all over.
multitasking here. So thank you again, and it'll be interesting to see what our solicitor has to say about it. So
Thank you all.
thank you for that. And we can welcome, if you would be so kind, Ms. Irving, to come to the table here. We have the privilege of having Adrienne Irving, who is the Director of Legislative and Community Services for the Delaware County Intermediate Unit, here today. And we're looking forward to having a discussion of some of the really hot topics of going on at the federal and state level right now, and how those might impact our Radnor schools.
Okay. Okay, well, good afternoon.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. I will try and, thank you.
I think you need to speak more into the microphone. I'm sorry.
Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay, I will try to keep this brief. This stuff can be a bit much, a bit boring. Let me start by saying, so in your packet, you have a legislative report, which is sort of our monthly, that's the brief. I
Or do you
think the
want
report
this
is,
one?
exactly, that's sort of our monthly kind of summary of various pieces of legislation, and it talks a little bit about the legislative session and things like that. So we do that monthly. The other thing you have is the legislative brief that you held up, Amy. And so that's pretty new, and so that's sort of our, kind of our midway through the month update. And it doesn't have everything that's in that legislative report. It pulls out anything that might have seen some movement recently, that we are actually following. And so that's what's in there, and it's both state and federal legislation in there, whereas the legislative report is primarily state legislative issues with some federal stuff built in. But so some of what I'm going to talk about is in those reports.
May I just add that we've received numerous comments on how helpful these are that you've been supplying to us, so thank
Great.
you. Ms. Spurtle's nodding her head vigorously back there, but thank you for that. It's really, really helpful, these
Great, yeah,
reports.
and we will, anything we can do to help, we'll continue to do that. So just very quickly, just a note on the state update. Budget hearings concluded on the week of March 6th, and the House returned to session on March 13th. The Senate returned to session today. It was a very short session week because of the snow, but it was enough for the House to put together a budget vehicle, a bill, House Bill 218. And they moved that out of House Appropriations Committee. The bill currently has the 2015-16 spend numbers in it. And so it will be gutted and replaced with whatever is negotiated within these next few months.
What, you said the bill that came out of,
House Appropriations,
yes, what was that bill number?
218.
Okay.
So we'll keep an eye on that. There's some optimism that we might have an on-time budget, but we still have a long way to go, apparently. So on both the state and the federal levels, bills and proposals affecting education and really general confusion about where we're headed is really kind of raising lots of questions. And everything from pension reform to the state deficit, other budget-related issues, and the continuing threat of some kind of school property tax reform will be dominating the conversation in Harrisburg over the next several months. And if that's not enough, the president introduced his skinny budget for this year last week, and that would eliminate many education programs. Another continuing concern is the Republican health care bill in Washington that will impact health care access for the poor and put more stress on state budgets, as well as drastically reduce available Medicaid funds for schools and students. So just a quick note, I see your kind of advocacy table over there. That's awesome. I think that's what we really need to do. We need to contact our legislators often about not supporting any kind of cuts to Medicaid or anything like that. So just quickly, other sort of state budget and education issues and updates that we are kind of looking at or hearing about. The Democrats in the Senate have prioritized basic education, special education, and early childhood education as their sticking points with these budget negotiations. So that's a good thing, but the other thing is they're in the minority on both the House and Senate. So they're going to have, a hard way to go. PSERS, always an issue. There will be another pension reform bill probably by the end of the month. Whether it goes anywhere remains to be seen. All indications say that it is doubtful that we will have a bill passed. The bill that will be introduced by the end of the month is going to be the same as Senate Bill 1071 from last session. I don't know if you followed that or not, but that bill did pass the Senate, and it would offer state employees 3 retirement options. There were 2 hybrid plans, and then there was a 401k style plan. At the time, Governor Wolf had indicated that he would sign that legislation, but it did not get the votes in the House, so it never made it to the governor's desk. But in any case, that proposal is coming back again. There is one change, and that's for an option for employees to who are on the older style pension plan to be able to jump onto the new one. So we are going to be watching that. There are two components to any pension reform bill that the governor's office would need to see to support it. And one is that immediate budget savings, or at the very least, no additional cost. And the other is it would have to keep the unfunded liability repayment schedule or meet it even faster. And it must come with the needed revenue source to do this. So, the chances of seeing a bill that will do both of those things are pretty slim. Property tax reform is another issue that we've been watching, and it had caused quite a stir several weeks ago, and then we had a short reprieve, and now we're hearing that that's coming back again, and we can expect to see a property tax elimination bill, and we're still thinking that it's going to be based on last year's Senate Bill 76. And so you probably talked about that numerous times, so I don't really need to get into that, right? So we'll keep watching that. That's going to be another thing to make us pick up our phones and call our elected representatives.
Adrienne, we as a board passed a resolution
Oh, great.
opposing
Okay.
anything like Senate Bill 76. And one of the things that we've been trying to track other districts throughout the state who have done the same, and we've launched, thanks to our communications department, a public relations campaign, and in conjunction with the support of our teachers union, to engage the community to write letters, which sample letters are over there if anybody wants to take one. I sent mine in and got a letter back from my local representative, who Alex Charlton, who said he disagrees with Senate Bill 76 and would not support it. And it's if anything like that came out again in that form. But we could use some help maybe from the DCIU to see if there are other districts who have not already passed that resolution to join us. There's strength in numbers. So do you know of anything on a countywide basis, that any kind of effort that's being organized?
Not really. And as far as I know, there's only a couple of school districts that passed that resolution thus far, anyway. Our last conversations were that they weren't willing to go out on that limb at this point. But now that we know that there will be a bill, they may change that. But they just wanted to kind of wait and see. You guys probably talked about that at your meeting on Friday?
Yeah, no, we didn't talk specifically.
Oh, you didn't?
about that.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
the status of the county, but-
Okay, yeah. But not very many districts
Well,
do.
there's strength in numbers, and
Yes.
not all districts within a county always look at things the same way. But I think that's one of the beauties of having an intermediate unit. If you can help us
Yep.
organize that kind of advocacy on a broader scale than we can as a district unto ourselves, we'd really appreciate it.
We can do that, definitely. Okay. Other kind of legislative actions. The following bills have recently been approved by the House, so we'll go through this very quickly. House Bill 176, and again, these are just bills that we are very interested in, that we are watching. There are other bills, obviously, that have gone through, even education bills, but things that are moving and have a chance of really passing through, we're keeping an eye on them. So House Bill 178 requires public schools to replace one of their fire drills each year with a school security drill, completed in coordination with local law enforcement. That passed the House 187-0, so that was unanimous. House Bill 224 gives immunity to school bus drivers who administer an EpiPen to students. That also passed 186-1. House Bill 250, and I think we'll talk a little bit more about this in a few minutes, but this increases the amount of tax credits under the EITC, the Education Improvement Tax Credit Program, from $125 million to $175 million, and the tax credits under the OSTC program from $25 million to $50 million. So that passed the House 147-39, and that's got a lot of support on both the Republican and the Democrat side.
And that
for
bill
that.
is the part of the whole school choice concern, because that's extra money that the state has the ability to direct away from
That's right.
public education,
Absolutely.
should it prefer to send it to parochial or private schools?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, Adrienne, I have a question on that one. Now, the money that a business would have to pay in school taxes, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't quite really understand how this one works. They can instead give that money into this program and get credit for the school taxes. That would come to us. Is that how it would work?
They're getting tax credit
Uh-huh.
for, the money that they give for scholarships for students who are attending private and parochial
Right,
schools.
right.
They're getting that money back as credits
But are they getting
from the
that?
state.
They're getting it from the state. Okay, but does that impact any of the money that we collect? The district collects?
So
No.
I was
here's
just-
here's an example,
Well-
I think, Chuck, of something remember when I was on the ref board. They had an EITC program, which is not the educational improvement, but it was the Earned Income Tax Credit Program. And if a company made a contribution to ref,
Right.
it would be a credit towards what if a Radnor organization, I believe,
Right.
made a contribution to ref, I believe it was a credit towards their taxes to the state. So
So it-
that would be essentially less money that they would be paying in, that would be distributed from the state back to, it would be a state tax credit.
Right, so they don't get tax credits for what they would pay in school taxes.
Well, it's just less money in the pot to go to schools
The big
because they're
pot.
getting a credit.
But it's a credit for their general fund in the state general fund,
Right.
Right.
right? Okay, so it
So they're
does,
taking, if they're contributing $1,000
Mm-hmm.
and they decide to donate $200, let's say, to ref, then the $800, instead of owing $1,000,
Mm-hmm.
they would only be sending the state now $800. That would be part of the money that the state would collect in coffers to
Right.
come back to be distributed to schools.
right. But I mean, it goes into the general coffers. It doesn't go in specifically give a credit, because they're not paying, they're paying
Right, so
taxes.
it's less money for public schools,
It's less money that will go into the,
for public schools,
no, not necessarily.
yes.
Well, why-
Because it will be siphoned off to
No.
whatever they want to give it to.
No, it would go to wherever they're sending it. It could go back into public schools.
That's not what they're choosing to do.
But I'm just saying,
That's
it's
not
not
what's
as if,
happening.
it's not as if if they're offsetting monies that are dedicated
Yes, they are.
to schools.
Yes, they are. It's siphoning off public education money to private entity.
No, they're giving the money to them, but I'm saying it's coming from the general fund rather than an educational
No,
fund. Well, we'd have to find that
No,
out
we can
because,
look into that. But it's basically incentivizing, I think, businesses to
Oh, I understand
fund
that.
Right.
yeah.
It's a tax
non-public
incentive.
schools, because they're increasing the tax credits available to those businesses who do that. So,
I was
Less
just
money
more
in taxes
concerned
that
about
they're paying.
our direct impact it may have on us.
right, it will. But we don't get that much money from the state as it is. But there's less to go
Well,
around.
we're going to find out more about that one.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Writing it down, okay. House Bill 202 eliminates the Keystone exams in English competition, Algebra 2, Geometry, History, Chemistry, Civics and Government, and World History. And it allows students who are enrolled in vocational educational programs to demonstrate proficiency on the Keystone exams if they demonstrate proficiency on the NOCTI. And that also passed the House.
But
Yeah.
that was specifically
For
for the.
CTE.
Right, for
students.
CTE
Yep.
students,
Yep.
okay.
only, it's not, that's not.
That's
No,
No,
not
just
us.
for the
Just for
career
CTE.
and technical
Yep.
education students who would
Right.
be waived of having to take those Keystone exams, right?
Correct.
By showing competency in career and
NOCTI or-
technical education related exams. And mastering the content, showing mastery of the Keystone area content courses through their course performance.
Exactly, exactly. Which is what the NOCTI does, yep. Couple others. Senate Bill 166, campaign fund collections. So again, that had caused a stir. Basically, it provides for protection of paychecks of certain workers and for the collection of political contributions. There's somebody in Harrisburg who's not fond of unions, and so,
heard that.
yeah,
Trying to come in.
yeah, every way, so that received final passage from the Senate.
Well,
back in
Eichelberger is
February.
chair of the Senate Education Committee, so basically, since he gets to call whatever legislation he wants for a vote, you can be pretty sure whatever he authors
Yeah,
will get
goes
voted on.
through. Very true. There are a couple of relatively newer bills that we are watching. One is Senate Bill 356, and I believe that is a repeat of a bill from Senator Pileggi a couple of years ago. It's a freeze on property taxes for senior citizens, so we were talking about property tax elimination. This is, I guess, sort of an alternative. Would freeze property taxes for seniors 65 and older, and that was recently introduced. And that is now with the Senate Finance Committee. Senate Bill 494 has to do with banning ghost teachers on school district payrolls. That's one of those, another,
Union
teachers
issue.
union attacking bills. That was introduced on March 10th and referred to Senate Education. House Bill 740 is interesting. It's one certified librarian per public school. So that was recently introduced, and if that goes through, it will require every school to have at least one certified librarian. So, interesting. And then coming up this week in the House is the budget bill, which we talked about, House Bill 218. And right to know cost, House Resolution 50 will require the Legislative Budget and Finance Committee to study the annual costs associated with compliance with the right to know law. The Senate has several bills on their calendar as well this week of importance to education. One is Senate Bill 128, employee leave policies. And although it specifically prohibits municipalities from mandating that all employers within that municipality comply with certain employee leave policies, it would also impact school district employers. Paycheck protection, it's another one, Senate Bill 167, that seeks to amend the Constitution by prohibiting school districts from using their payroll system to collect membership dues, non-membership fees, and political contributions. Superintendent contract timeline, Senate Bill 227. That would change the date of the required board action on a superintendent or assistant superintendent's contract from 150 days to prior to expiration to 90 days. That's another one that we've seen over the past several years repeating. And then mandated leave, Senate Bill 229 would remove the provisions for mandated sick leave and it basically moves it and places it on the bargaining table, so for the most part. So that's the state update. The bigger news, I think, is coming from Washington. We can quickly go. I know you had some voucher questions that you wanted to kind of talk about. So since we're running out of time, and we could skip straight to vouchers, or?
I had one question before we leave the state. This
Okay.
morning, the Senate and House Education Committees were holding a joint hearing on ESSA. Given that there's been legislation introduced at the federal level to roll back the regulations that were imposed by the Obama administration, how can we get a sense of how those hearings went?
Hopefully I will have a sense of how those hearings went tomorrow, I hope.
Okay.
So as soon as I find something out, I can make sure I get that to
Okay,
you.
that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay. We'll skip to vouchers then. And then if there's time, we can go back to other federal things like the president's budget. So, did you receive I don't know if you received this or not. We tried to answer some of the questions that we received regarding vouchers. Right, where are those? So just basic, quick history. There have been several attempts for a voucher system in Pennsylvania. None have been successful. Pennsylvania has been successful in getting the education scholarship tax credits through, which we kind of talked about. The EITC program was enacted in 2001. Again, it allows corporations that make contributions to educational improvement organizations or nonprofits that support innovative programs for public schools to claim tax credits for their contributions. The maximum credit per corporation is $750,000, and total funding for the program was capped at $100 million. The amounts of scholarships funded are determined by the awarding organization. And to be eligible for that, students have to come from households with incomes less than $75,000. The other is the acted in 2012 is the Opportunity Scholarship Tax Credit Program, OSTC, and that allows corporations that make contributions to scholarship organizations to claim tax credits. To be eligible, the students, again, have to live in low-achieving school zones, and those that are in the bottom 15% of public schools based on the test scores, and they also have to live in households with incomes of less than $75,000. House Bill 91 was passed into law in 2014. That consolidated both of those programs into one. Governor Tom Ridge had tried several times, many times, to pass a voucher program, and each time it was denied. The Senate passed a voucher bill. That was Senate Bill 1 in October 2011. That caused a big stir at that time. That bill could not get past the House. The then Governor Tom Corbett was a proponent for tuition vouchers and supported the bill that would have expanded the EITC program. And for students in low-income families and the 144 schools with the lowest results on test scores. So, again, that did not pass. Just in doing some history or some research, local attempts, meaning Delaware County, at vouchers in Pennsylvania, way back in 1998, the Southeast Delco School Board attempted to create its own voucher plan. Don't really know why, but it caused a lawsuit, and the judge did not approve that particular voucher initiative. Federally, the Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, is noted for school choice, and the President lauded school choice in his first address to Congress. And let's see, House Resolution 610 was introduced. That is the Choices in Education Act. If passed into law, it would repeal the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965. It would limit the authority of the Department of Education, such that the authority is limited to only award block grants to qualified states. So the bill essentially establishes a voucher, education voucher program, through which each state would be distributed block grants, and the block grants will be distributed based on the number of eligible students within each LEA, within their geographical area. And so from that amount, the LEA would distribute a portion of funds to parents who choose to send their children to a private school or to homeschool their child, and to do so in a manner that ensures payments will be used for appropriate education expenses. And to be eligible for the block grant, states have to comply with certain things. They have to comply with the education voucher program requirements, and they have to make it lawful for an eligible child, for parents of an eligible child to enroll their child in any, it says any public or private elementary or secondary school in the state, or to homeschool them. We have not seen anything that says a school district has to accept, a public school district has to accept a child with a voucher. Really don't think that it works that way. It's really for students to be able to go to a private school or non-public school, or to be homeschooled. There have been, again, state attempts at school vouchers. While there are presently no bills pending in the Pennsylvania legislature for that, the EIT and OTC programs basically come closest. House Bill 237 would increase the amount of available tax credits for the EITC program by $70 million, and the amount of available tax credits to the OSTC program by $30 million. This is a reintroduction of a bill last year, House Bill 752. That bill had passed the House, but not the Senate. But now the bill is currently in the House Education Committee. And then we talked about House Bill 250, which passed the House and is now waiting for consideration in the Senate. That also increases the amount into both programs. There's a final bill, that's House Bill 546, that will require all beneficiaries of the EITC program to be held to the same standards as others who benefit from public funds. It would also require reporting and accountability to the Pennsylvania House and Senate. And of course, this bill has garnered very little support so far. So in terms of vouchers, it's something that we're watching. Who knows where it's going to go? There is currently a lot of speculation about how the president, the current present administration in Washington, and the secretary would carry out their school choice policies. If we look at the education secretary's history, under the AFC, American Federation of Children, it's an advocacy organization that she chaired until she was nominated for her current position. AFC supports both publicly funded charter schools and even private school choice. Last fall, the AFC issued a report ranking the existing private school choice programs. There are 50 of them located in 25 states and in Washington, D.C. The program ranks number one is Florida, their tax credit scholarship program. And it actually also unites the sort of three concepts that DeVos supports, and that's privatization, religious education, and a hands-off approach to accountability for private schools. So, again,
I think that's a good point to finish up on, not to be rude, but
yeah,
we do have other,
okay.
but it was very enlightening, and it just shows us how much work that you have to
Lot of
do to keep up with what's happening in both Washington and Harrisburg, and we appreciate all that you do, and it makes our job a lot easier to have you as a resource that we can go to, and thank you
You're welcome.
very much for that.
So there's a lot.
Yes, thank you. We didn't even get into the
No,
president's
we
budget
didn't.
and all the concerns, unfortunately, that come along with that. But we can
We'll want you
always,
back.
if anybody has public comment with remarks related to that, you're welcome to submit them, and we do our best to try to answer those as a follow-up.
Yes.
So at this point, is there any?
Well, I just want to say thank you very much for coming. We didn't get a chance to even ask questions. I think this
sorry.
is one of the most powerful 20 minutes we've spent in this committee for a long time, so we need to
you.
have you back. Thank you
Anytime.
very much.
I'll definitely come back. There's so
Thank
much
you.
going on, so
Yeah,
we'll
thank
be
you.
back. Thank you.
Any public comment?
Hi, I'm Lisa Goldstein at 670 Mainland Road in Newtown
Hi,
Square.
Lisa.
Hello. Thank you all for your time. I really encourage you all to do this again. This time, apparently, you asked about vouchers to focus on the impact on special education.
That's her specialty.
You could come back or even provide a larger event for the community. There are tremendous concerns about the impact of House Bill 610 and what that would mean for special education protections. And so I don't know what you need to do to.
That's the Federal House Bill 610.
Federal House.
Right,
Yes.
which would really
Yeah.
impact.
Yes, we've had these sessions before where we realize we can really talk for days about this stuff.
Well,
Since the 20 minutes before this was about communications, it would be a real service to the district if it wasn't just in the basement of the administration building for those who happen to find out about it.
We can look at another venue and really do it right.
Right,
Because
because,
it's more than a 20-minute discussion about that. And
Right.
that impacts the whole country.
right.
So, yes.
Your mic, Ken.
Oh, it's the.
Oh, it's a garden level.
Ground
yeah.
floor, garden
I'm
level.
sorry, it's a very lovely garden level room. I'm just hoping a few more people would show up if you were educating us about what it would mean for special education.
And
And-
for anything else that we discussed today, please tell people that these meetings are recorded and on our website, and if they have any questions, to
Or-
please,
yes, or any other issues that they need, like you had brought up, we can bring that to the surface.
board questions at rtsd.org. So,
Okay.
thank
Thank
you. Okay, so I guess that concludes the GRCC meeting for today. All right, thanks, everybody.
We'll take a 5-minute break.